Hello, brilliant. We've got Steve Couch here today, author extraordinaire. Steve, welcome. Thank you for coming on. Can you just tell us a little bit
Thank
about
you very
yourself?
much, Nat.
That's all right. Tell us about yourself. What you've been up to?
Um, I I spent about 15 years, as I described it, failing better at getting published, writing and submitting and writing and submitting and going away and learning what I'd done wrong and writing and submitting and being rejected again. And after 15 years of that, somebody said yes. And last year my first novel was published, which was just brilliant. And then since then I've had a second one that's come out and I'm working on a third at the moment. So
Brilliant.
really making up for lost time, really.
You say about failing better. That's a really good way, positive spin on it. Your first novel, that was
Yeah.
Foul and Fair, wasn't it? I think.
No, Foul and Fair is the most recent one
Oh,
that
right,
came
okay.
out this summer.
Yeah.
Before that was Dead Man Singing.
Ah,
And
fantastic.
I have
Brilliant.
I have both of them there just for maximum
Excellent.
publicity purposes.
Brilliant. So Dead
Um,
Man Singing was your first one. Tell us a bit about that. What
yes.
what was that? What was that novel, and how did that come about?
Well, the premise of the novel is has-been rock star who fakes his death to get his record selling and then goes out on the road as his own tribute act. Um, and the idea came from a song that I heard at a gig more than 30 years ago, but it took me 30 years to make the connection and get that idea from it.
Mm,
And actually, if I'd thought of it at the time, I didn't have the skills to turn it into what it's become. And I've been thrilled with the response to Dead Man Singing. Lots of people have been very kind in
yeah,
saying how much they've enjoyed it.
that's brilliant.
And I'm really proud of how it's come out.
Mm,
It's everything I wanted it to be. Foul and Fair is a similar style of book, a fast-paced, character-led thriller, quite an easy page turner. And this is set in the world of kids' grassroots football,
right.
where the main character has a feud with a rival manager that goes way out of all proportion,
Mm.
and they end up doing extraordinary dirty tricks against each other. And all the time at the heart of it, I coached in kids football for about 7 years.
Yeah,
There are people who are in kids football because they want the kids to enjoy their football, and
yeah,
there are other people who are in it because they want to win.
yeah,
And the book is about that clash
yeah,
and where the tension is between doing the right thing and getting the right result.
yeah,
So there's a lot of big questions in the
yeah,
books, but it's also a lot of fun and
yeah.
a lot of stuff that people who know those respective worlds will recognize.
I was going to say, I think you've literally nailed grassroots kids football on the head. I used to work for Dorset FA. I'm just going to say that now. So I know
All right,
all about
excellent. They
that.
they they
And you
trained
were
me as a coach. Yeah,
absolutely spot on. But it's great. Obviously, you volunteered as a grassroots football coach.
yes.
And how much of your life is represented, would you say, in some format in your books?
That's a great question. Neither of my main characters are me.
Yeah.
James, the football coach in Foul and Fair, is probably closer to me.
Mhm.
Um, because unlike Dave in Dead Man Singing, I've never been a rock star. I've never faked my death,
And you're not a
and I've
tribute
never
act.
fronted a tribute act. No, no. I did. I once a friend and I discussed forming a Chaz and Dave tribute act, but it never got beyond the stage of a stupid idea in the pub.
Uh,
Um, but with Foul and Fair, although although I'd say it's not me,
mm,
it is fair to say that um, there's an awful lot of real life
yeah.
in the book.
Things that people can resonate with.
The Absolutely
Mm,
most of the things that the rival manager, not the main character, but his rival,
yeah.
most of the things that he does and says on the touchline are either things that I've witnessed people do
Yeah.
or which friends have told me they've witnessed.
Yeah.
Um, And lots of people have said to me, Kieran is the name of the
Yeah.
antagonist. Lots of people have said, yeah, I've met Kieran.
Yeah.
And the people who've said that live in different parts of the country and were involved in grassroots football at different
Yeah. Yeah.
periods of time. So I think Kieran is an amalgam of all the idiots in
Yeah.
kids football,
Yeah.
and was very, very much fun for me to write.
I bet
Um,
that was quite a nice release, really, to all the things that you, like you say, you've witnessed, you can then put onto a page and build into
yes.
a character. Brilliant character research, first-hand character research.
Funnily enough, if you work for Dorset FA, Martin Dighton, who you may
Yeah.
well know,
Yes.
who he he took my level two course. He
Mm.
taught me at level two, and he read early drafts of Foul and Fair, and just to see if I was getting the technical side right,
Yeah.
and he felt it was an authentic portrayal.
That's
So if
brilliant.
it's good enough for Martin, it's
Yeah,
good enough for me.
absolutely. That's fantastic. Obviously you spoke earlier about you're working on a third book. Any chance of any
Mm.
exclusives, little tidbits that you can tell us about that?
Yes, I've literally just this morning sent out a draft of it to a beta reader.
Yeah.
So I'm at that stage in it.
Yeah.
Uh, and funnily enough, it's like Dead Man Singing. It's based on a song that I
Mhm.
heard. The starting point for me was a
Yeah.
song. Um, I'd finished writing Dead Man Singing. I'd had it accepted for publication, and I was in that period between the two.
Yeah.
And I discovered a folk singer called Grace Petrie, who
Right.
I'm now a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And she has a song called No Woman Ever Wants to Be a Muse that talks about what it's like to have someone writing songs about you that maybe don't necessarily represent you,
Yeah.
but represent their side of the story, and your side doesn't get. And I felt quite challenged by that because
Mm.
there's a character in Dead Man Singing who becomes the main character's muse.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, maybe I should try writing something that comes at it from the other angle. So
Mm.
this is the story of a young woman whose life is turned upside down when her ex-boyfriend has a massive hit single with a song about their breakup
Mhm.
that isn't the way she would describe their breakup,
Yeah.
and which has her name in the title.
Oh, wow.
Um, and as a result, everybody knows it's about her.
Oh, God.
So,
How,
so that's the starting point.
yeah. How can I just
Sorry,
ask you, what was it like writing for a female character? Did you find that challenging at all? Or was it, it's okay because you sort of had a character in your first book that you wrote about?
um, I was very aware. Well, both of my first two books, the main character is um, a man of a certain age
Yeah.
going through something of a midlife crisis,
Yeah.
and I know what that's like. This is a young woman in her early 20s,
Yeah.
and I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
I I was very aware of wanting to get that right, and
Mm.
I among the people who are currently looking at it and are going to give me feedback are people who are closer to that
Yeah.
demographic.
Yeah.
Um, in Foul and Fair, there's a secondary character. About a third of the book is told from their perspective,
Yeah.
who is a young not a young, who's a single mum of a young child.
Yeah.
Um, so I've written from the perspective of female characters before, but not from quite so
Yeah.
far from my experience. I think while I'm very aware that I'm not a woman and I don't have that experience, at the same time, I'm not a rock star and I don't have
No.
that
And you,
experience.
yeah.
And I think the job of an
Yeah.
author is to have empathy with the characters
Yeah.
and try and portray what's going on inside them
Absolutely.
honestly and accurately.
Yeah.
And I hope I've done that.
Yeah.
When I get feedback from my beta readers, I'll be better placed to tell you whether I've pulled it off
Absolutely.
on
They're
this
they're
one
very important, aren't they,
or whether there's more
beta
work to
readers?
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're important because
But I'm really excited with where I've got that book to.
yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, in such a short period of time, your third book is obviously sounds like very much nearer the completion side of things. you know, being with a beta reader, it's probably going to be a case of going back and maybe editing anything that maybe suggestions they've come up with. So I think you've done incredibly well, really, you know. So, I mean,
Thank you.
what did you learn from your first book? Any mistakes that you've learned from that, that you're now rectifying on your third book?
Um,
Maybe the
I've
publishing
certainly
process.
learned more things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always been someone who does a lot of drafts of a
Mm.
book, and I like to get it to a very high standard before I start
Yeah.
sharing it with anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, I remember once when Nick Hornby was relatively new on the literary scene, and everyone was quite rightly praising him and saying what a wonderful writer he was.
Mm.
And I read an interview with him once, and he was saying, the interviewer said, "Oh, everyone's talking about just how wonderfully clean your prose is and how, you know, how clear and easy to read." And Nick Hornby said he never saw what the fuss was, because if other writers aren't doing that, they maybe just need to do another couple of drafts.
Mm.
The It's about not accepting it as being done before it's done.
Yeah.
Um, and I've always taken that on board
Yeah.
and done lots of drafts.
Yeah.
I think I've learned a lot about structuring the
Mm.
story.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Imogen Imagine is the one I'm working on. Imogen Imagine is a far more complicated structure than I think I would have attempted on the other two.
Wow.
Um, but I think I've pulled it off. And again, we'll see what the
Yeah.
beta readers think.
Yeah.
But so rather than learning up from mistakes, although I'm sure that I've made many, and yeah, I have, it's more building on the successes and building on
Yeah.
what works
Yeah. No, that's
and
brilliant.
what
I
you
mean,
struggle towards.
yeah, and it is obviously with the first book, it is all new, isn't it? So the second book, slightly easier than the first. And by the third book, you sort of probably feel more comfortable in your surroundings in respect of the whole publishing process, marketing. So you've got a good idea of what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Funnily enough, I corrected you when you said Foul and Fair was my first book.
yeah.
I wrote the first draft of Foul and Fair before I wrote Dead Man Singing,
Oh,
had
really?
Foul and Fair rejected,
Mm,
and after Dead Man Singing, I went back to Foul and Fair. I knew what was wrong with it, but it took me a long time to work out how to put what was wrong right.
yeah, that's
Um,
interesting.
and the single mother character that I mentioned,
Yeah,
who's also a policewoman, she was the main change for that new draft,
right.
because one of the problems was that the main character James does some outrageous things and just gets away with them.
Yeah,
And by having a strand of the story from another perspective of a police officer
yeah,
who doesn't know him, but who's slowly closing in on investigating the other side of the things he's done,
yeah,
there's a sense of a ticking time bomb getting
yeah,
closer and closer to him, and is it gonna blow up on him before
yeah.
the end of the book?
But that's good that
And I
you've
couldn't possibly tell you whether it does or not.
no, no, don't give anything away. No,
But
absolutely.
so so in a way, Dead Man Singing I learnt from Foul and Fair, and with
Yeah,
Foul and Fair I was able to learn from Dead Man Singing. So
yeah,
both of them in a way are my first.
yeah. No, it's brilliant how you've managed to sort of. It sounds like almost they were side by side. It's just one happened to get published first before the other one. You know, it's because you've obviously gone backwards and forwards with them. So, you know, it's interesting you saying that. You know, you've written one first, but actually it was the second story that got published first. It's interesting.
I knew that there was still something worthwhile in Foul and Fair,
Yeah,
and I knew I hadn't got it right yet.
yeah,
And I thought before I start on something brand new, I'd at least see if I could get that right.
yeah.
And I'm very glad I did, because I'm delighted with the response to that one, and with how that one's come out as well.
Yeah. Off the back of that, I mean, who is or who are your supporters? Who are the people who are there keeping you going and much like you as a coach keeping the kids going, who keeps you going
Hmm.
for your writing?
Um, a number of my friends are really encouraging. My family keep me well and truly grounded by being resolutely unimpressed by anything I've achieved in my writing, my publishing. Um, Foul and Fair is dedicated to my two sons, who
Yeah,
are one's just turned 21, and the other one is 18 later this month.
yeah.
And neither of them have read it, even though it's dedicated to them.
Oh, they
And
might
neither of
come
them,
back
I think,
round.
has any intention of reading it.
I'm
So,
sure they're proud of you.
but I'm sure they are, but they would never admit that. The Bournemouth Writing Festival
Mm,
has there's a great community that's grown
yeah,
up around that,
yeah,
and
definitely.
that's where most of my writing friends
Mm,
come from,
yeah.
and they've people there have been hugely supportive,
Mm,
and yeah, they're a great support
yeah,
network, um,
yeah,
and just my friends really.
yeah, yeah,
I coach something called Man versus Fat Football in
yeah.
Bournemouth, which is essentially Weight Watchers for blokes
Mm,
based around football,
yeah,
and all of the lads at the Bournemouth club have been really great with getting behind the books,
yeah.
um, and constantly joking about the fact that I keep mentioning that I've written books, and
And so you should.
rightly accusing me of plugging them at every opportunity.
Talking about that, I mean, as a published author, how much promotion and marketing do you do? And has that increased with each book?
Um, I find the marketing a struggle.
Mhm,
I'm trying to be more active on social media,
mhm.
and to get myself out as much as I can.
Yeah.
Um, the last few weeks, I've kind of not deliberately, but effectively, I've dropped back from that a bit,
Mm,
partly because I was very bunker mentality with Imogen Imagine,
yeah.
and with trying to get the draft to the point that I've just got it to this week.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, my social media game hasn't been as
It
strong as it normally is
it
in the
is
last few
difficult.
weeks.
It is difficult though, isn't it? It's having that balance because obviously any time on social media or any marketing or promoting, which is essential for your previous books, ultimately stops you from your next project. And as writers, that's very insular and it's very focused. So I understand why you're saying you pulled back. It's a hard one, isn't it, Steve, to try and balance.
And at the same time, it's an important part of the job.
Yeah.
If we write these books because we want people to read and enjoy them,
Mm.
and if I'm not marketing my
Mm.
books, people aren't going to discover
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how good the book is, if no one knows about it,
Yeah.
they're not going to want to read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm aware that it's something I need to do more of,
Yeah.
and I'm wanting to do more.
Mm.
Um, I'm recently I did an author talk, which is something I'd like to do more of, and I'm going to look into trying to line up more opportunities to go out and talk to groups
Yeah.
about my writing story, um, which I think will help just to get the name out there and to
Yeah.
make people aware that I exist.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what's the best advice you've ever been given? I mean, with regards to either writing or publishing or marketing, is there any advice that you have been given that you found really valuable?
My favorite bit of advice, um, so when I started writing children's stories when my boys were little, and then at some point switched to writing for adults.
Yeah.
But very early on, someone told me always finish the first draft,
Mm.
and it's so much easier to revise something that is complete
Yeah.
than it is to create something that's not. So
Yeah.
even if the first draft is rubbish, get the first draft done
Yeah.
and then get it good. And actually, I say even if the first draft is rubbish, the first draft will be rubbish. The
Yeah.
first draft is never anywhere like what it needs to be.
Yeah.
But the only job the first draft has is to exist
Yeah,
and give you something to then build up from.
absolutely.
So always finish the first draft is
Yeah.
one of my favorite
Yeah. And on that
lines.
note, have you got any stories lurking in the drawer that you think one day I'm going to get back to that?
I have um I have a few stories on file
Mm.
that are waiting for their turn to be the next one off the runway.
Yeah.
Um, and when I finish a book, there's then a process of deciding which one I think is the right one to run with. I tend not to work on more than one thing at once.
Yeah.
Um, I had started writing something that wasn't going very well after Foul and Fair,
Mm.
after the first draft of Foul and Fair, and I actually dropped that when I had the idea for Dead Man Singing because
Mm.
something about Dead Man Singing just said, you have to write this and you
Yeah.
have to do it now. And it's rare that I'll put something aside
Yeah.
for another story.
Yeah.
Um, I've some of my ideas are literally a couple of lines
Yeah.
on in a Word document. Some of them I've gone back to and have tried to develop a bit. Um, well, I don't know which one I'm
Yeah.
likely to do next
Yeah. I think
when Imogen Imagine is finished.
I think you get a gut feeling, don't you? Like you said, Dead Man Singing, you knew you had to do that. You had to write that. So
Yes.
I think it is very much a writer's gut, as I call it, that what's
Yeah,
next. So yeah. And
but and as well, I think there's the knowledge of as writers we know how long and how much time investment there is in each
yeah,
story.
yeah,
So you want to pick the right one
yeah,
because it is going to dominate your life
yeah,
for several months.
yeah. They live
Um,
in your head.
and and I love that.
Yeah,
I love that process of being in the thick of it.
yeah.
But you don't want to pick the wrong horse.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Definitely, definitely. Well, I've got to be honest. I'm going to throw a last question at you, which I've been asking a lot of authors that have been doing these talks. Kindly doing these talks for us. So, what published book that's already been written do you wish you'd been the author of? Putting you on the spot now.
I'm. Can I cheat and give you two?
Yeah, you can. I let Sim the last interview give me two, so I'll let you as well.
Well, I will do that then. The answer that I normally give to that is a book that I first read about 30 or so years ago,
Mm.
um, which remains the only book that when I finished it, I had to physically fight back the urge to start it again right from the very beginning,
Yeah.
immediately. It's a book called A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving,
Right.
which is just the most wonderful story. You cannot, the ending is so unexpected and so not what you think is coming.
Mm.
And yet, as soon as you've read it, you see it was the only possible ending, and it has been screaming at you all the way through the book
Oh
that
gosh,
that's
that's
what was going to
interesting.
happen.
Yeah, say that
But
title again. Say that title.
and it's A Prayer for Owen Meany by
Right,
John
okay.
Irving.
Okay.
Um,
Make a note of that.
I saw a review on Amazon once saying this is the best book John Irving has ever written, and he is never going to write anything as good as this again. However, I now have to read everything else he ever writes
Yeah.
just in case he comes close.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought that summed it up.
yeah.
The other one is a book I read quite recently by a New Zealand author called H.G. Parry, called The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep,
All right. Yeah.
which is set in the modern world, set in the real world, but one of the main characters is someone who has the ability to make characters from books come to life out of books and exist in the real world. And um, and it goes, yeah,
It
the
sounds.
consequences are
Yeah.
way beyond what you'd expect, and it's brilliantly done. But there was a moment in it where I thought we're getting towards the end. I thought, oh, I can see the twist she's leading up to here, and this is going to be good. I love that. and we got to that twist, and she twisted it again into something I totally hadn't seen, and that was so much better than the one that I thought I'd cleverly worked out.
Yeah.
Just yeah,
It's great when that
I've
happens.
read a few of her books, and they're all really good. Um,
Oh,
so those two, one old one and one recent favourite.
yeah, brilliant. I tell you what, I love it when there's a book that you're well into and it does give you a twist. It's brilliant. You can't get any better than that. And to make you want to go on and buy and read the rest of that author's work, that's a sign of a writer, a really
Yes,
good writer, isn't it? That's fantastic. Talking of
yeah,
books,
I, it's something I try to do with my books is make sure that the ending is not predictable and is satisfying.
yeah,
I think that's so important to leave the reader well.
yeah,
So hopefully,
yeah,
if I'm pulling that off, then people will have the kind of reaction that you just
brilliant.
described.
Let's hope they
That would be
do.
great.
And just hold them up again for us, Steve. Let's see. Let's see. Fair or foul?
Dead
Foul
Man
or fair?
Singing,
Yeah. And Dead Man Singing,
that's
definitely. And
and
foul and
Foul
fair.
and Fair.
Brilliant. Will those books
There you
be
go.
with
Both
you?
published.
Sorry, go
That's
on.
all right. I was just going to say they're published by the Book Guild,
Yeah.
and you can get them wherever you normally buy your books. And I hope they're going to be on the bookstall at the festival.
That's what I was going to ask. That's fantastic. Talking of the festival, on Saturday, 16th of November, you're on the panel of What
Yes.
Three Things? That's at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
And then the evening of work
Correct. Yes.
at 7 p.m., which is a nice little showcase of lots of different work. And I understand that you're going to be reading from some of your work. Is that right?
I have a friend of mine, Ollie Hopper Pay, is a local musician in Bournemouth. He's going to be accompanying me, and we're going to do a musically enhanced reading from Dead Man Singing.
Oh, fantastic.
In the we did this at the book launch event. The opening chapter is the main character doing a gig,
Yeah.
and the songs the cover versions that he plays speak to his situation in the book and help to establish who he is and what's
Yeah.
going on. In the book, I couldn't quote the lyrics because of copyright, but
Yeah.
Ollie can play them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be me reading and Ollie playing and me reading. And
Fantastic.
we've done it before a couple of times. It works really well.
Oh, I can't wait. Can't wait to see it. Obviously, I'm actually there as well, all over the weekend. So I shall
Brilliant.
certainly catch up with you, Steve, then. Thank you so much for giving up some of your weekend to come and chat with us today. I hope you've
It's
enjoyed
quite
it.
all
I
right.
know
Thank you
I've
for having
enjoyed
me.
it. It's not a problem. And we will see you in, well, a week's time, literally in a week's time.
No,
All right.
brilliant.
Thank you ever so much. All right.
Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
Nat.